Greetings, listeners. Howard and I spoke with a very special guest. She is the chair of an AmLaw 10 corporate law firm. We discussed some of the defining moments for this storied law firm. We discussed her personal leadership style, her love for the firm, and her vulnerability and thus her ability to connect with everyone in the firm. We discussed the firm's growth strategy, the power of their culture, and how they successfully opened offices around the world. Enjoy. So welcome everyone to the Future is Bright podcast. My name is Chris Batz and joined by my co-host Howard Rosenberg. Howard and I are at the epicenter of law firm talent and strategic growth here in New York City and the UK. Howard is a partner and the head of talent intelligence and acquisitions at Batz and Brunel, and I advise and facilitate corporate law firms mergers at Columbus Street. And today we have a very exciting guest, Jami Wintz McKeon, chair of Morgan Lewis. Jami, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
So, Jami, you are at a storied law firm. Your story of leadership, your history of leadership is storied. And I'd love to hear from you this journey from being homegrown as an associate to chair. What were maybe a couple of those defining turning points for you as you got to this place?
You know, the funny thing about defining points is you never really know they were defining until you look back on them. So I always tell people I've had the world's least interesting career. I've been a lifeguard and a lawyer at Morgan Lewis. So two jobs my whole life. I started at Morgan Lewis in 1981. I think I had a lot of different early jobs, being on different committees and sort of subscribed to the say yes to everything view. And then two things I would say were probably most defining. First is when we absorbed 160 lawyers from the Brobeck firm in California in 2003, we opened in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. And the then chair of the firm asked me if I would go out there to lead that integration. So my husband and I and kids relocated out to San Francisco and lived there for 8 years to really connect our new colleagues to the rest of the firm. And I think in retrospect, that was a pretty significant turning point. And then I would say when I was asked to head the litigation practice, which is what I was doing before I was elected chair, which is the largest practice in our firm, that probably was the other one. And I moved back to the East Coast in 2012 and was elected in 2013 to be the chair of the firm.
Jami, I want to hear more about the lifeguard position.
It was a good job. I was a competitive swimmer from the time I was 4 to 18 and spent my summers by swimming pools. And the only negative thing about being a lifeguard is I was a lifeguard in the days where we thought baby oil was sunscreen. So I've had a few little spots here and there on my face I've had to deal with.
So now I'd like to ask you, so in your role as chair at Morgan, like what keeps you up at night? What are the issues that are like consuming you as a leader of the firm?
So I think I would divide them into two categories. You know, the first is maybe because I've been at Morgan Lewis for a very long time, or maybe it's just my personality, I would say I have a very personal style of leadership. So, you know, I know all 750 of my partners. I know the people in our firm. And one of the things I didn't expect when I became the chair, I just didn't think about it, was that you become the recipient of everybody's triumphs and tragedies. So you hear about the 8th grade spelling bee winner, and you hear about people's illnesses and their traumas and those things. We had an associate this summer who was struck by a hit-and-run driver on his bicycle in California and killed. You know, those things shake you as a firm. So I think that part of what keeps me up at night is worrying about our people. Is this person okay who I know is having a hard time? Is this person all right? Is this family going to be okay? So there's that piece. I would say, you know, the second piece, obviously, when you're running an organization that's primarily focused on client service, is you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can all the time to serve your clients in the best possible way. And that covers the individual deals or cases. It covers the organizational depth It covers whether you're collaborating well across your 33 offices around the world in 17 time zones. And it covers things like AI. It covers things like the pandemic, the things that change the geopolitical world, the things that affect our clients and affect our ability to deliver service best to our clients. Those are the things that keep me up at night. So my husband always says that the problem with me is I actually think I can control the universe. So almost everything keeps me up at night because I think if you just work at it hard enough and stick with it long enough, you'll figure out the solution.
How do you stay in touch with that many people across kind of the different roles and responsibilities across the firm? I'm not talking just the partners, but obviously the support people, the people who make the firm alive and go every day. How do you do that? How do you have an open door policy to kind of hear people's situations and issues? How do you do that?
So, I think if you think about your own family, and I talk to people about this when we talk about culture, your family has a culture. Nobody sat down and said to you, Howard, this is going to be the culture in our family. But you know what it is. You know who's accessible. You know who's available. You know who's interested in what you're doing. You know what their priorities are. I think firms and organizations are the same way. If people know that it is a priority for you to be in touch with others, they go out of their way to let you know what's going on with them. People in our firm, one of the great strengths of our firm, I think, is that we have always been into collaboration before collaboration was cool. So, the mantra that one of our late great chairs coined long before I came along was there's no limit to what we can achieve as long as no one cares who gets the credit. Now, that doesn't sound really insightful, but for a law firm, that's unusual because a lot of law firms are about the credit. In our firm, it's about giving other people credit. So people write to me to tell me about the joys and sorrows and triumphs and tragedies of others. They write to me themselves, and then I have something called a corner that is on our intranet where I will share with people things that I think are important. Sometimes they relate to our practice, sometimes they relate to the world. And when my mom passed away on April 27th this year, I woke up the next morning at 6 o'clock and I wrote a letter to our firm about my mom. Well, everybody then starts writing to you about their parents, and they say, boy, this reminded me of this. Or one of our partners who just lost his dad the other day reached out to me because he knows that's something I care about. So I think the way you do it is by people knowing that it's important to you and it's welcome. And I also think, it's important that you be someone who's responsive to those things. If people send you notes about things like that and you don't respond, they're not going to write to you about it. But if they send you notes about things that are important to them and you write back or you reach out back, then they know that this is something you're interested in and they keep that dialogue going. And for me, I think it's a very important part of leading an organization.
Jami, would love to hear, as much as you're able to share, what has been the firm's growth strategy over the past decade, and how are you evaluating the future and new market opportunities? There's a lot happening out there. It seems like a lot of conversations. There's some very interesting entrants from the UK. There's rumor and reality of private capital now looking at law firms. So would love to just hear how you guys are looking at that.
So let me take a little license with your question and make it slightly longer than the last decade. When I took over as chair and I talked about my first presentation of my strategic plan, which was in 2014, we were at that time a firm of about 1,000 lawyers that was trying to be global, but really wasn't. So one of the things we talked about was the importance of strengthening our competitive advantage by addressing the holes that we had and building ourselves globally. And we got lucky in some ways, gutsy and lucky, by in the middle of 2014 being contacted by the Bingham firm. And although a lot of people thought that was a great firm and they were very interested in the firm, 750 people seemed like a lot to swallow. Yeah. So most places didn't want to do a whole firm solution. And we looked at it differently, maybe because I was naive and I was new as a chair, although I think everybody agrees we would do it again in a heartbeat. And that really changed our growth overnight because it was focused on the basic principles that we've always applied, and that is we go where our clients need us to be, we go where we can be successful, and where we can have top quality people who approach client service the way we do. So it's a combination of great people and also great lawyers, which for us, we've never really been willing to give up on one or the other. And I think, again, not every firm is that way, and that's okay. There are a lot of really successful firms where that's not the way they look at the world. That's the way we look at the world. So if you look at our growth over the last, 20 years, going back to when we brought in the folks in Northern California and the Brobeck firm and how that served our clients in a place where they wanted us to be with services and top quality lawyers, that was hugely successful for us. And we've replicated that since then. So since the time we brought in the Bingham folks, if you look at our expansion into Dubai and then into Abu Dhabi, if you look at our expansion throughout Asia, starting with a very small office in Tokyo, and then what we've done in Singapore and Hong Kong and China, if you look at how we've approached Europe and the UK and the way that we've approached growth, a couple of years ago, we were fortunate enough to open in Munich with a whole team of lawyers from Sherman and Sterling. We've just greatly expanded our Paris office with a whole team of lawyers from Kramer Levin. Each time we've looked at growth, we've said, where do our clients need us to be? Where can we be effective and successful in that community, in that locality, in that practice area, with top quality lawyers who look at client service the way we do, and who will also be motivated to approach collaboration the way we do it. And that really has been our growth strategy, and it's worked really well for us.
So on the growth strategy, do you think that the younger lawyers coming through the ranks today, do you think they are okay with the kind of growth that you're pursuing, or is there like a growing mismatch, what's happening in the marketplace?
Not for us. Not for our firm. I think our younger lawyers are excited by the growth that we have. But again, I think this goes back to something I said before, that every firm has strengths and weaknesses, but there is nobody who doubts that our firm is an extremely integrated, collaborative place. Every office, every practice group, this is just the way we do it. I always say it's like having a big network of cousins, and I love all my cousins, and we're all very close, and you're all part of the same organization. So if you're an associate and you see growth that is actually going to expand your horizons, either by giving you access to more people or more clients or more opportunities, that's something you're going to be excited about. And if you can do that while not losing your essential character of being a place where there are people who care about you as an individual, where your inclusion and belonging is important, then there's really no downside to it. And so I think, our next generation lawyers are very much a part of the growth that we have, and very much support the growth.
How does the incoming technology around generative AI kind of playing a part? Because you've got such a strong culture of collaboration. Is the technology kind of a friend or a foe against that kind of culture aspect of the firm?
I think it's actually very much a friend, but I think some of that has to do with a little bit of our history. So if you go back to early 2000, we were the first firm of our size. We might have been the first firm altogether, I don't know, to develop an e-data practice. And that was actually because one of our associates was watching what was going on in these big mega cases and saying there's got to be a better way to gather information, to store information, to search information. And she literally started our e-data practice. That practice is a $100 million practice for us. We've been using AI since 2000. It's just, people have called it different things. So it's a very familiar place in our firm to use technology. But what we also did is a couple of years ago, when we realized that this really was going to be different than anything before, we entered into a partnership with Thomson Reuters and told them, we want to be your firm that's going to beta test all of the things you're investing in. You know, Thomson Reuters was then putting $100 million into AI. It's now 200 million a year in AI, and out getting terrific products. And my view was, you know, we have to have a digitally fluent community. It is really important for everybody to understand this. So partnering with somebody who was responsible and helping us to develop a product that we could use, that our clients would be confident in, that we could be confident in, would be important. And so I asked some of our most senior leaders and practice generators to be part of that core team. And we've been doing that for quite a while. And as of August 1st, all of our lawyers are credentialed in the use of co-counsel corps. So we're all together sort of approaching this and thinking about use cases and how we use it and how we benefit our clients, and making this something that we're not afraid of, we're just kind of interested in and encouraged by. And now we're thinking about other ways to leverage that technology. So I think that there are ways to really have that be a very positive development in your organization. But I think that you have to have that approach of, hey, this is something new, this is something interesting, this is something creative, this is something innovative. Let's all jump in and get our hands dirty in it and figure out what we're going to do with it.
I want to pull on your wisdom for a moment and give you an opportunity to share advice. So we have a very large audience of law firm executives, and there's a lot happening right now. It's pretty tumultuous for law firm leaders. And there's a lot of change coming. There's a lot of things happening with pull on talent, technology, whether it's succession planning, and then we have emerging competitors and things like that. I would love for you to share, what advice would you give people who either have the role now or will be stepping into a role of leadership of a law firm?
Well, you know, I should say, I think it's a tremendous honor to be in a role like this. And it's a great honor to be in that role because of the importance of the organization to you. And last year, when I gave my keynote at our partner meeting, I talked about not who I hope our partners will think of for the next year, but what attributes I hope they will look for. And one of the things I said, at the risk of sounding a little hokey about it, is that what I didn't know when I took on this job, and I know now, is that to be a really great law firm leader, you have to love the firm that you're leading. And you have to love the job, you have to love the people, you have to love the clients. I mean, I fully appreciate that this is a high profile job to have, and a lot of people think it may come with a lot of rewards, but the reality is it comes with a lot of 24/7 responsibility. And the responsibility of being at the head of any organization, big or small, but certainly the size of law firms now and in the environment you describe, is a very demanding one. And you have to love it. You have to love the people that you work with. You have to love who it is you represent. You have to really care about the future. So I would say this is a job that not only should you only take it if you feel that way, but you should keep reminding yourself of why that's important to you. Because I think it's very easy to get caught up in all of the things that can go wrong. You know, lawyers are very good at spinning out the negatives. Larry Richard, who has a website called thelawyerbrain.org or .com, talks about studying lawyers, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of lawyers over the years. And one of the things we have in common is, you know, every paragraph ends with, and then I'll be homeless. Like, I won't get this brief in on time, I'll miss the deadline, and then nobody will give me, you know, a job again, and then I'll be homeless. And lawyers are very pessimistic. I think they score like 12% in optimism on a normalized scale. and 95% in skepticism. So you start out with people whose job it is to think about everything that can go wrong. And then if you're the head of that organization, you can easily lose sight of all the things that are going well. And so I think you really have to discipline your mind so that you don't get almost seduced by the concerns, the anxieties, the worries. And I think, that's a really important thing to keep focused on.
Yeah. Jamie, along those same lines, because of the demand of the role, and I'm sure it's very demanding in every organization, you're leading a group of people, and I'm sure it's more even with this many people you're responsible for. How do you personally stay grounded? How do you stay energized? And how does that look when you're, I guess, maybe modeling it or inviting your team to do the same? Because I know you want them to be fully present and grounded too.
Well, I feel I'm very lucky because for me, it's my family. I mean, it really started with my parents and sort of their attitude and approach to things. My husband, my children, my husband got a master's in applied positive psychology back in 2018. And our deal was that he would take the time to do that and I would get the benefit of it. And it has been hugely beneficial to me. I mean, it helps me a lot. But I feel like I try to keep my eye on the ball of what's really important. And what's important to me comes back down to what I said from the beginning. As a law firm, you don't sell widgets, right? What you have is your talent and you're helping people. That's your job. That's why I think it's such a wonderful profession still, despite all the slings and arrows. What you do is you get up every day and your job is to use your creativity, your curiosity, your brains, your compassion, your listening skills, your communication skills to help solve a problem for clients. And I think keeping focused that that's what you're doing can be very grounding, but you have to have something else in your life, in my opinion, too. And in my case, it's my family. And that really keeps me grounded. They are the most important thing. And I don't lose sight of that fact. And I don't lose sight of the fact that I think you can have all of those things. You can have a great life, a great family life, a demanding job. You can have all of that as long as you're willing to recognize that it's not always going to be in equipoise. It's not always going to be perfect. But if you have people to help pick you up and support you around you, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, on Chris's kind of question, piggybacking off of it, like you've been at the helm for 15 years. You have a incredibly busy and demanding day job. What kind of support infrastructure do you have so you can perform what you're doing every day?
So I'm a big believer. I learned this from other people, and I didn't do it very well for a long time, but now I'm much better about it. I outsource a lot of things. So I I I'm not a great cleaner. I'm not one of these people. I had a roommate in college, and she might miss class, but she'd get up at 7 o'clock on Thursdays to clean the apartment. I don't do that.
Oh,
So I'm lucky I have somebody wonderful who comes and cleans the apartment. We have a dog and we have wonderful dog walkers and people who stay with her when we travel.
Right.
And I have people around me. I'm willing to spend some of the money that I make for this incredible job to let other experts do their jobs better. And I also recognize that I can't do everything perfectly. So, for example, a couple years ago, we built a house at the shore, and we needed to build it because my dad, who's 95, can't do stairs. So we needed an elevator. And so we had to get the house built. And I don't have time to go through all of that. I was very lucky because I have a daughter-in-law who's an interior designer and she really helped. But to a certain degree, I didn't go there every week. I wasn't looking at every single thing. I didn't look at all the fabrics. I didn't figure out what faucet this was. I just figured I was going to let other people who were experts help make those decisions and let that go. And I think that to a certain degree, you have to realize, even if you're somebody like me who tends to be very hands-on, Some people could say a control freak, but that I would hope not quite that way. But sometimes you just can't do everything perfectly. And, I love to cook. We have great big family parties where I cook and I make a huge mess in the kitchen. And thank God, I have people in my family who think if I cook, they're willing to clean. But I don't worry if everything comes out at the same time. I don't worry about whether there's folded linen napkins. I mean, I try to focus on the things that really count in my mind. To other people, the folded linen napkins might be the most important thing, and then maybe they should give something else up. But I just think you have to try to keep things in perspective and give yourself a little bit of grace about the things that maybe you don't do perfectly.
Yeah.
Appreciate your answer.
Yeah. Jamie, you have an amazing reputation of being a leader among leaders within the AmLaw 100, AmLaw 50. I am curious, who inspires you in your role? Who has inspired you? Fictional, alive, passed away? I'm just curious.
So, I mean, first of all, my parents, I know I said that before, and it probably sounds not that exciting, but my parents were really amazing people. My father had his own companies, worked like crazy, customer service, client service. I really learned from my dad. My mom had been a Broadway dancer. I don't know anybody with a
Wow.
better work ethic than she had. There
Oh,
was a
wow.
song in some show she was in called Do It the Hard Way and It's Easy Sailing. And my mom really lived by that. And
Wow.
so I grew up in a family that really believed in hard work, really believed in family, really believed in doing your best, but was also a tremendous safety net. And I remember many times when I was going along in my career and you would hit some of those bumpy spots, something would go south. I remember I always knew that there was nothing that could happen that I wouldn't have a safety net, like in my family. There would always be those people there. And so I find that very inspirational. I'm inspired by people who believe in a greater good. I'm inspired by people who believe that they have an obligation to give back, that as a member of the human race, as a member of society, you aspire to to be better, to do something more, to give back in a way that, I guess it's the old JFK, ask not what your country can do for your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I mean, I'm really inspired by those people. I'm inspired by people who have a really hard road to hoe and they do it. They get up every morning. I remind myself all the time when I think I'm having a hard day, it's not that I'm not allowed to have a hard day, but when I think about what other people, many other people go through, whether it's, health, financial, emotional, anything, I feel really blessed. I remind myself that I'm lucky. And one of the things that my husband does with his positive psychology efforts is we do this character strengths test that tells you not what your weaknesses are or strengths are, but what are the parts of your character that you draw on the most? And my number one character strength is gratitude. And that has served me so well. And I think I really admire people who, recognize how fortunate they are and try to pay it forward for other people. One of my children wrote her college essay about paying it forward, thinking about my dad. And I grew up in a real pay it forward family. And so those people inspire me. I'm inspired by my colleagues all the time, senior to me, junior to me, around me. And I'm inspired by our clients. I had the chance to do a fireside chat recently with Jamie Dimon, and he just always blows me away
Yeah.
at just how thoughtful he is and how comprehensive his knowledge is. So I have a lot of inspiration around me.
And Jamie, any further thoughts on what's next for you? Because you're not going to be chairman forever, I would imagine, is to kind of pay it forward.
Here's the truth. I thought by this point in my career, maybe I would have already decided what that would look like. Because along the way I've had opportunities to do things. And so I thought about that, but I have to say, I'm just going to run through the tape on this job. I feel like this is, and maybe it's more so this year than ever, this is a full-time job. It takes all of your energy, all of your thinking. Some of the things that have popped up in recent history for law firms, it just total, things out of left field. And so I really feel like, I've been at this firm my entire career. I do love my firm, and I love the people in it. And I'm just going to run through the tape and then I'll figure it out.
Okay. So, Jami, if you wouldn't mind for me, finish this sentence. The future is bright because.
The future is bright because the world continues to produce smart, eager, energetic, creative people who are committed to the greater good. And as long as that continues to happen, and it happens every single day, we're in good shape. Maybe bumpy from time to time, but I believe that will prevail.
Yeah. And Jami, how can people find you, contact you, follow you on social media?
I'm on LinkedIn, so easy, and I'm very easy to find.
Very good. So, Jami, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for your time today.
Great to talk with you guys.
Thank
Thanks
you for
so
being
much.
on the show. It was great to have you.
Thank you for having me.